My guest for today is Rahul Shah. And Rahul is a communication specialist who's been consulting and training in the field of communication for the past 15 years. Rahul has worked with over 60,000 individuals from a variety of companies, and he has really specialized in helping people communicate better. All right, so today, I guarantee you're going to get a lot of insights. So without further delay, let me first bring Rahul on board. So Rahul, let's see. Let me get you on. Here you are. Welcome, Rahul.
Thank you, Jeet. How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you? I hope you're
Very
having a
good.
good
Thank you for
weekend as
having me
well.
on board.
Always a pleasure to have you on board, Rahul.
Yes,
Yeah.
always a
So I'll
pleasure
just
chatting with you as well.
So I was just telling our live audience who's going to be tuning in today that we are having you on board for the next 1 hour. And the goal really is to help people learn how to answer questions or answer interview questions more insightfully. All right. So, of course, there's going to be many different approaches when it comes to answering interview questions. And there's also going to be a lot of different understandings when it comes to what interview questions are. Of course, a lot of times people are going to assume that interview questions are only for job seekers. And it's true, a lot of times when we are applying for a job, it's from the perspective of an interviewee. We are being interviewed. But having said that, I think now with what's going on with the COVID situation and everything has moved online now, we also realize that a lot of subject matter experts are also being interviewed in the virtual space almost on a daily basis. We get to see a lot of Zoom interviews, webinars, even YouTube live sessions like what we are doing right now, where people are being interviewed and they are put in that position to share expertise. But a lot of times what I've realized is this: not a lot of people are actually sharing insightful expertise. And that's why I thought we're going to kick off this session today itself by trying to address both of these things. How do we answer questions more insightfully from both perspectives, from the perspective of a subject matter expert as well as from the perspective of a job seeker? Okay, so for those who are tuning in, as always, do remember, live sessions like this, it's meant for you. And we want that engagement. We want to keep it fluid. And the best way to get the most out of a live session like this is to post your questions. Like I said, I've got Rahul here for the next 1 hour. Make full use of this time. Ask him the tough questions, the hard-hitting questions. Rahul is the best person to answer these questions. And I know even if he can't, he will get back to you with the right answer. So put your questions down on the live chat section, and I will look through these questions and I will start bringing up these questions about 15 to 20 minutes into the show as well. Okay, so if we're all good, Rahul, all good on your side? Are you ready for the hard-hitting questions, my friend?
All good, buddy. Bracing myself for impact.
You're gonna do so fine. Okay, so Rahul, the first question I really want to ask you is this. Okay, what is the difference? Okay, what is the difference between answering questions and answering questions insightfully?
That's an interesting question, Jin. I think the question itself gives away the answer. When you answer questions, you can go very superficial. You can scratch the surface, and you can get away with that. But answering questions insightfully requires you to provide certain insights. Insights that are based on your own opinions, your thoughts, evidence, proof, justification, case studies, analogies, stories. And when you're able to back up your responses with some of these things, they become a lot more insightful because it gives people a glimpse into different perspectives, new understandings, new realizations, new reflections, new learnings. And that's how you answer questions insightfully. Whereas answering questions can be something that is just sidestepping, can be just brushing the topic, but not really going in depth into it. And with that, you're not really giving people a thorough understanding of the subject, of the topic, or the matter on hand at that point in time.
Cool. I mean, that's already very insightful, right? I mean, I suppose you're right. When you're talking about answering insightfully, I think as an audience, whenever I'm listening to an interview, what I really want to hear is thoughts that is backed up by some form of justification. Okay, that's going to help me get more clarity over what's being said. And I suppose the times when I really feel that that was a bad interview, I suppose there's only two scenarios. One is bad questions, you know, or two, just answers, but they are not purposeful answers. Okay? So with that, Rahul, now that we know the difference between answering questions and answering questions purposefully, my next question is this. What are some of the mistakes that people generally make when it comes to answering questions?
I think the number one mistake that people are often making when it comes to answering questions is number one, they don't pause to think. They jump straight into a response. They feel this need to respond almost immediately or with a sense of urgency. They are afraid that if I pause for a second too long, I may come across as being unsure, or I may come across as being not convinced about my answers or not well informed about things. I may not appear like I'm fluent with my thoughts, and so people feel awkward with pauses after questions. So the moment a question ends, they have this urge to immediately start responding. Now, what is happening when you do that is you're not really giving yourself an opportunity to internalize the question, analyze the question, and think about different angles and avenues with which you can approach the particular question. The first thing you always want to find out whenever you're dealing with any question is what is the intention behind that question being asked? What is the underlying motive behind that question? What do you think the interviewer or the person asking the question hopes to receive, to acquire, to extract from you through asking that question? Because the question is simply a channel, right? It's not the end point. It's not a destination. So it's just a channel through which they are trying to extract certain information to you or to direct you into a certain direction so that you can answer in a certain flow. So when you don't give yourself time to internalize that question, to analyze that question, to consider different aspects, the different angles, and the different directions with which you can approach that question, you tend to rush into answering it without a well thought out response. So your response is going to come across superficial. It's going to come across seeming unprepared. It's going to come across even sounding very amateurish. And you may not be able to structure your response to have a logical flow or sequence that audience finds easy and convenient to follow through with. And I think that's important, right? You want to be able to bring your audience on a journey from not knowing to knowing something new, or from not remembering to recalling and remembering something that they already know, or from not being aware of something to now being able to reflect upon a new thought or a new consideration they have put before them. So, and for you to bring them on a journey, it has to be a logical flow, it has to be an easy sequence for them to follow, to be able to build up their interest, their curiosity, and their understanding. So you have to pace it right, you have to structure it right, you have to lay it out in an easy to follow manner. And for that, it requires you to pause a little bit to think through your responses with a clear mind. The only way your response is going to have any clarity is when your thinking has a bit of clarity. So a clear thought process is going to lead to clear articulation. Clear articulation is going to help with clear understanding. So that's how clarity is going to be established at the earlier. So I think there are a lot of mistakes people make, but if I had to pick my top one, I would say that most people don't pause to think through their responses sufficiently. So that's at the top of the list for sure.
Yeah, that's actually very true because pausing, like you said, allows you to internalize the question, right? Okay, but my question now is this: when you're doing a live interview, okay, how much time do you have to pause and internalize the question? Because again, you can't be sitting for like 2 or 3 minutes, because and in a position where it's awkwardly silent, even 20 seconds seems like an eternity. So as someone, I want to internalize the question, I want to think of a proper response, but how much time do I really have?
So I think a lot of people underestimate the capacity of the mind, right? We have a very powerful processor in our heads. And the good thing is with this processor that we have been gifted with, right? We don't really need a 20-second, 30-second kind of a pause to think through responses or to internalize. I mean, let's just take a look at it this way. They say that first impressions, right? You only need 2.8 seconds to be able to form a pretty accurate first impression about somebody. And in that 2.8 seconds, if you just take a look at a number of things that are going on, right? You look at their appearance, their demeanor, their expressions, their body language, their micro expressions, whether they turned up on time or whether they were late, what are they wearing, the colors that they're choosing, the choice of words that they're using. You have this entire chunk of I don't know, hundreds of different aspects of information that you're taking in and processing within 2.8 seconds to make a judgment about somebody. To be able to assure yourself that this person I'm going to be interacting with is a friendly person or is an unfriendly person, is a trustworthy person, is a not trustworthy person. So within 2.8 seconds, you can do that. So when we are responding to questions, we are not even looking at that many things. We have a very specific question that's given to us. So we just need to look at the 2, 3, 4, 5 different options that we have. And probably to do that through the art of association. Tony Buzan came out with a mind mapping process based on this. This whole art of how our brain just functions on the basis of association. It connects dots, it connects one point to another point. It creates this whole web that's presenting to us a network of information in our minds. So if you look at that and we try to understand that, you need maybe about a 2-second, 3-second kind of a pause. And I think that's okay. And even if you think you need something longer than that, there are techniques to buy time. And I think your next question is going to be, how do we buy time?
Yeah, I'm going to get that to buy time. But before that, actually, one question popped into my head. What if I don't know the answer? The question is put forth to me, and I really don't know the answer. And I think that's one of the times where you get stuck, right? It's a stuck state, and you just don't know what to do next. So how do I still appear or put on as this position of a professional, of an expert, but at the same time having that honesty to really show that I don't know. How can I do that?
I think first and foremost, Jeet, you have probably been on panels before, and or when we are on speaking stages or when we're in trainings, this happens to us all the time. Somebody throws us a question out of nowhere, and we are expected to answer these questions. And I'll say this as a mark of a professional or a subject expert. If you're really pitching yourself as a subject expert, you must have deep expertise in your subject, right? You cannot walk into a room or you cannot walk into a virtual session thinking that you are going to be able to throw smoke into your audience's eyes, ears, and pretend to be an expert, right?
So audiences are very smart these days, right?
Audiences are very smart, and we are living in the information era. Everything's at the tip of their fingertips, right? I mean, they got Google, they have YouTube, they have Facebook, they got access to all kinds of mediums and platforms that are instantaneous. So I think that you cannot pretend to know something. You cannot pretend to be a subject expert if you don't truly have that expertise. And having expertise does not mean you know everything, but you definitely should know enough to at least understand context, background, history, application, some theories, underlying principles, associated principles. So even if you don't know the response to what you have been asked directly, try to provide some other form of value, try to provide some other form of understanding, and the audience will be happy with that while acknowledging that you do not have the answer to that particular aspect of the topic at the moment, because it might be data intensive, it might require you to have a lot of case studies, it may require you to have a lot of insights on recent research that you may not have time to read up on, and that's okay. I mean, if today somebody comes and asks me, Rahul, you know what, the world is moving towards digital communication at a much faster rate today. What do you think is the adoption rate around the world? What's the percentage increase of virtual communications as compared to mainstream communications? I don't have that answer, right? Because I've not been reading up on it. I've not been following that news. So I don't have that answer. But do I have a sensing that people are adopting digital technology at a much faster rate? Yes. Do I have some examples and analogies to share? Yes. So I may not have the number, but I do have some experiential evidence to show, some analogies, some anecdotes to share that says that yes, from my observation in my networks, my sphere of influence, I've noticed this, and based on that observation, this is what my understanding is. Fantastic. So you can always go, you can always still answer the question from your own perspective, from your own understanding. And that's an insightful answer, isn't it? Because if you look at specific data, statistics, that's available online. People don't want to come to you for that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But people come to you as a person, as an individual. They want to know your thoughts, your opinions, your understanding, your observation, your experience. How do you deal with things? So a lot of times it is about you, right? And how do you transfer that personal experiences and observation into something that's value added for your audiences? And that's an art that I guess subject experts or interviewees or speakers need to develop over time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rahul. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are live with Rahul Shah today, a communication specialist with over 15 years of experience in the field of communication. And we are chatting. We're having a chat today and taking questions on how to answer interview questions insightfully. And the question that we are on right now is actually, what are some of the common mistakes that people make when it comes to answering questions? And Rahul shared, in his opinion, his belief is that the number one mistake, that if you had to choose, the number one mistake is people don't pause enough, to think and internalize the question, and they're too fast to rush into giving the answers. So, Rahul, thank you for that. It was really very insightful. We've got a few questions that has come in already. So I'm going to keep my third question for you, maybe for later on. And let's start taking some of the questions that's been coming in through the live chat channel. So ladies and gentlemen, if you are watching and you have a question that you want to put forth to Rahul today, feel free to just write it down on the live chat section. We will get to your questions. So far, we've been speaking about answering questions from a position of a subject matter expert. That means if you're a subject matter expert and you are now being invited to give live interviews in the virtual space, how can you better position your answers, so that you put forth your answers and solidify your position as a subject matter expert. But at the same time, if you do want to know more about, from a perspective of a job seeker, like how can you answer questions better when applying for jobs and seeking for jobs, please put those questions down in the comment section as well, and we will get to it. So Rahul, I'm going to go through the chat now, and I'm going to pick up a few questions. Okay, so are you ready, my friend?
Yes.
Cool. Cool. So we've got Dr. Shivam here. Dr. Shivam's question is, how can we feel confident and enhance our self-esteem in our professional life? Any book that you want to suggest, Rahul?
I think that when it comes to enhancing self-esteem and self-confidence, it's two different things, right? To feel confident, to be able to enhance your self-esteem, and I like the fact that you asked this question. It says, how do we feel confident and enhance our self-esteem? Because a lot of times when I get this similar question or related question, it's always a matter of how can I demonstrate confidence, or how do I show that I'm confident? So projecting confidence is one thing, but truly feeling confident and enhancing self-esteem is an entire different thing altogether. And there's a lot of deep inner work that needs to be done with regards to that. So I think the question can be answered in many different aspects. But I would like to say, number one, start by identifying what is the self-talk that's going on in your mind. If you're not feeling confident, if you're not feeling your self-esteem being very high, why? What is the conversation that's going on in your mind about yourself? What is a voice telling you? Is it saying that you're not competent enough? Is it saying that I'm not good enough? Is it saying that there's so many other people in the world? What makes me someone that people should be listening to? Is a voice saying that I don't know enough about a certain topic? Or is a voice saying that, no, you know what, I'm horrible at expressing my thoughts, or I'm horrible at articulating myself. I know the content, but I just cannot put it out with the right words. So what exactly is a voice telling you? Because therein lies the gap between being confident and how you're feeling right now on the way to confidence. So let's say if your voice is saying that I know my stuff, I know my content, I'm an expert in my area, but when it comes to interviews, when it comes to answering questions, I just don't know how to string the right words together, well, then there's a gap in communication skills. So attend a few communication workshops. Go and sign up for some virtual trainings. Go and find a coach. Go and find a mentor. Go and find a book that you think would be good for you. So find the right resource that you can connect and relate to help you build up those communication skills so that you feel more confident, right? The second part is after you have addressed the self-talk and identified what is the gap that your self-talk is amplifying to you in your minds, the next step is to take action to prepare for whatever interviews that you're going for, or whatever job you're or next task or assignment you're embarking on. Lack of confidence or lack of esteem uh, can a lot of times stem from fear, right? And the fear of uncertainty, not knowing enough, not thinking enough, fear of judgment, fear of embarrassment, fear of losing face, fear of forgetting something, fear of being misquoted, fear of being misrepresented. So there is a fear element that makes us feel scared, anxious, nervous, and that kinds of reduces our confidence and our self-esteem. The answer to that is preparation. The more you know, the more equipped you are, the right skills and the right knowledge to deal with those situations that you are going to need the confidence to address, the better you are going to be feeling about yourself, the more ready you're going to be feeling, the more confident you'll feel as a result of it. So equip yourself with the right skills, with the right knowledge. Do a lot of preparation work. There is the good thing about a lot of these things is it doesn't have to be in the spur of the moment kind of a thing, right? If you're positioning yourself as a subject expert, or if you're a career person, or you're a professional, you usually have time, right? You usually have opportunities to indulge in self-learning, self-growth, self-development, to upgrade yourself, to upskill yourself, to acknowledge yourself. So the more you do that on a continual basis, on an ongoing basis, the more confident you're going to feel as a result of it. So number one, ask yourself what the self-talk is. Identify the gaps that the self-talks are going to be amplifying in your mind. Number two, prepare as much as you can. The better prepared you are, the more confident you are going to feel, and you're going to appear to others to be as well. So preparation is extremely critical. Right? You never want to go into any situation, start on any task, any assignment, any job, any role, any interview without being thoroughly prepared. Right? So that's the second thing. And number three is build good rapport with your environment, the people in your environment, the atmosphere in your environment, the air in your environment, the ambience in your environment, the setup in your environment. Build great familiarity and rapport with your environment, because the more assimilated you are in your environment, the more comfortable you feel, the more confident you're going to become. Because a lot of times people don't feel confident because they're out of their familiar territories and they're out of their familiar zones, right? So, for example, the reason if I'm speaking to 20 friends, I might feel very confident, very competent. But if you put me in front of 20 strangers, maybe I may not feel as confident anymore. I may start questioning myself. I may start questioning, are these 20 people a lot more knowledgeable about this than I am? Are they a lot more intelligent than I am? Are they a lot more better informed than I am? So those questions and those doubts start kicking in, and therefore I'm not going to be able to be the best version of myself. Right. So one of the things I want to do is I want to get to know these 20 people, have as much contact time, interaction time with them on a casual basis. Get to know who they are, what's their personalities like. The moment you find that people are friendly, they're approachable, they're understanding, they have a keen interest in what I want to say or the subject I'm going to be talking about, it automatically makes you feel a bit warmer towards them, and therefore you come across a bit more confident, a bit more comfortable as well, and that helps to elevate your sense of self-perception too sometimes, right? And the last part, I think, is all about EQ, right? I think sometimes our emotional quotient plays a part. How connected are we to people's feelings, sentiments, emotions, to our own feelings, sentiments, emotions? And I think that is a longer, much deeper work in progress, the whole dealing with the self-esteem part. And I think that could be a separate question altogether. How do we improve our self-esteem?
Fantastic. That was already quite a lot of information that you've shared, Rahul. And I must agree with you that these are all powerful insights that you have shared. Because the reality is, I think you hit the nail spot on when you said that there is a difference between feeling confidence and actually being confident. Because at the end of the day, it's all about emotions, right? Feeling
Yeah.
confident, that's an emotion. And what stops you from feeling confident a lot of times is fear, and fear itself is an emotion. And it's about understanding which emotion is taking over at that point of time. So Dr. Shivam, I hope that answered your question. The second part to Dr. Shivan's question was, what books would you recommend for us to read? Is there anything that's in your personal favorite?
Jeet, to be very honest, I think there are a lot of books that are available out there, right?
Yep.
Books by if you talk about old, well-reputed books by Zig Ziglar, books by Dale Carnegie, to more recent books by Robin Sharma, by you know Tony Robbins. These are all books that helps with a lot of inner works and inner workings. Some people are more spiritual. Go pick up a book by the Dalai Lama. And that will help as well. So if you want, religious scriptures could also be good books to refer to, and there are a lot of answers that lie between them. So I don't usually like to prescribe one particular book, because a book is something that's very personal. A book that worked for me may not work for everybody else, because you got to be able to connect with the contents of a book at many different levels. The point of view of the author, the approach, the experience, the context in which the book was written. Are you able to relate to it? Where are you in your life right now? Different authors are writing books on different positions in life. Some of them are writing books from a rags to riches approach, because that's the journey. Some authors are writing books from success to downfall, because that was their journey. So different authors are writing it from different, and it's a very dangerous thing to prescribe a book. It's like prescribing medication to a patient without really knowing what his illness is, and that's, I think, kind of dangerous to do, right? So books, I think, are very dangerous to prescribe, because you never know where the particular audience or the particular reader is in their life right now, and by prescribing a wrong book today, you may just be sending them on the wrong path, right? So I'm a bit reluctant to prescribe a specific book for that reason. But what I would say is, I think download certain apps, and I think Storytel is a very good app to download. If you're not downloaded it yet, it gives you access to thousands of books and audio books available for less than $5 a month. So I think Storytel is Storytel. Storytel is a good app to have. Blinklist is a good app to have. It gives you a good summary of a lot of the more popular book on the shelves. And if you don't have time to read the entire book, they just summarize the key points, the key learnings for you. So Blinklist is a good app to have. So I rather point you towards resources where you can get access to a lot of good material rather than prescribing a specific book itself. And I hope that's okay with Dr. Shivam, because I just believe that you cannot prescribe medication to a patient without knowing what their symptoms are, or what their core issues are.
Yeah, and I suppose it's also a good approach to have, right? And a good mentality to have, where is to just keep learning and keep exploring and see what resonates with you, rather than just pick one and just stick with it, because hey, there could be newer stuff that comes by, more insight. So yeah, keep learning and just keep reading. And I'm still waiting for your book, Rahul. Maybe that's the reason why, I've also been not able to find a good book yet, because we're still waiting for your book to come out. So when's that going to happen? If that's a question for another interview, you can just say that, and we can keep that for another interview.
I think once I know enough, I don't know enough yet.
Cool. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are here today with Rahul Shah, speaking on how to answer interview questions insightfully. So we are taking live questions right now and we're answering. So there was a question from Dr. Shivam just now. So Rahul, I've got another question for you. I'm going to just bring this question up as well. And this question is really from, this question is from Ahmad Wahid. And I think he's asking this question from a perspective of a job seeker, which is what an interview actually wants to know from the interviewee, or what exactly he wants to judge. So I suppose from a perspective of a job seeker, what is it that an interviewer is really looking for when they are interviewing a potential candidate?
Right. So I think there are several things that an interview will be asking you, right? They could be asking you credential verification kind of questions. So they might ask you about your university life. They might ask you about your education journey. They might ask you about your campus life and what you did on campus. But a lot of this is also just to verify and make sure that you have had good learnings, and the credentials that you stated in your resume are backed by actual experiences and not just paper qualifications for the sake of it, right? So one of the things that they want to know is whether your credentials are actually backed up with relevant experiences as well. And that's the second thing that they want to know. They want to know what kind of experiences you have had, how extensive this experience has been, how much have you learned and grown through these experiences. Not experience for the sake of an experience, but how has your development been through the experience, and how these experiences added value to you, and through that, how have you added value back to your past organizations, or how do you plan to add value back to your next organization. So I think that you're going to have a lot of experiential questions, or questions based on your experience and the validity of your experience, or the application of your experience, or the value and the richness of the experience. So they're going to ask you about your experiences, right? The next is they're going to ask you opinion-based questions, and that's really to get a sense of what your thought process is like. How fast do you think? How fluently do you think? How constructive is your thought process? How balanced and fair is your thought process? Are you somebody who is on the extreme end of viewpoints all the time? Are you more in the middle? That could also be dangerous. It's not necessarily good all the time, because that could also mean you're very indecisive. Or are you more likely to provide a balanced thought process, but still being able to take a stand by being more inclined to one side over the other? So they're going to ask you some opinion-based questions to get a sense of what your thought process is like, what your thinking is like, how fluent you are, how logical you are, because that means it's going to affect how you're going to work and relate to the people around you in your organization or in your new workplace. So they can ask you opinion-based questions. They might ask you behavioral questions, right? And this is to test how you react under pressure, how do you react under stress. So they might ask you questions that may seem to be completely off the charts, just to put you into an awkward position or odd position, right? Or they might ask you questions like, tell me about a time when you failed, or tell me about a time when you got into a conflict. How did you resolve the conflict? So a lot of this could be behavioral based questions, just to get a sense of the person that you are, the personality that you carry. How are you likely to thrive, or how are you likely to regress under difficult situations or stressful situations or pressure situations. So they're gonna ask you behavioral questions as well, and they want to be able to assess your personality traits through that. And nowadays they are using psychometric testing quite extensively, so they might even put you through a psychometric test in order to ascertain that whether it's DISC, MBTI, Tetramap, Enneagram. They can use a variety of tools to test you out on that basis. Then they might ask you competency-based questions. They might give you very specific puzzles or problems to solve, right? And they want to see how are you going to be able to navigate around it, or what kind of solutions are you going to propose for them in, say, 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And they might do this through making you write essays, through oral questioning, through pre-interview work, or role-play simulation, or they might put you in a focus group setting an environment. So they're going to be able to do this through various formats and models, but they basically want to test out your competencies to make sure that your knowledge is translatable into actual application, and not just something that you studied and you know, but you don't know how to translate that into applying it to create viable solutions for your organizations as well. And of course, beyond all that, you might be asked case questions or brain teasers, and all of this is just to get a sense of how quick you are, how reliable you are. But most importantly, if you ask me, what does the interviewer want to judge? I think there are three factors that they want to judge you for. Number one, are you trustworthy? Are you honest? Are you a person of integrity? Right? That's something that they want to know. Number two, they want to know your personality. They want to see whether you're going to be a good fit into their organizational culture. Right? If the organization is all about fun and people having a good time together, working in a very casual atmosphere, people who are working on very friendly terms, and you're someone who comes in very rigid, very uptight, you might not be a good fit in terms of personality to the organization. Or if the organization is a place that there's a lot of protocols, a lot of formalities, it's a very structured organization, it's an organization that has got a very traditional management structure and approach, and you come in with this really, really new age ideas that are very edgy. Again, I don't think you might be a good fit. So they want to judge you in terms of your personality. And the third thing I think they want to judge you for is how learnable or how coachable are you, right? They never want to get know it all, right? If you go into an interview and you're demonstrating that I know it all, I'm the best of the best, and there's nothing, I don't need to learn anything else. I'm not willing to be coached. I'm not willing to be corrected. I'm not willing to be taught new things. And that might pose a problem for the organization moving down the right to deal with you. So they also want to know how learnable you are, how coachable you are, right? So the more coachable you are, the more they get a sense that you're willing to learn new things, you're willing to adapt, you're willing to be flexible, the more you stand a chance at being hired at the end of this. So I think these are the top three things that they look out for in interviews when they want to get to know you.
Fantastic. So, well, we've got some very good questions so far,
Yeah.
and the next question is also going to give us a different dimension now. So we've got Rini who's asking a question, and this time it's from a perspective of an interviewer. So she wants to ask you from a perspective of an interviewer, how can we ask engaging questions?
I would say to start off by being curious. Be really, really curious. I think that's the key thing. If you are, I always tell whenever I'm conducting trainings for moderators or interviewers or media trainings or trainings for people who are going to be going out there and doing research work for which they need to interview people. I always remind them of one thing: don't get into this zone that I am conducting this interview for the benefit of other people, right? Or don't have an outcome in mind. Don't have a predetermined response in mind, right? And the interviewers try to fall into that trap. Before they ask the question, they already know what response they want to draw from the audience. Like, for example, I know Jeet really well, right? And if I talk to Jeet, it's very easy to fall into this trap because we have known each other for a few years now, and we have worked so close together and been such good friends that sometimes I know what his response is likely going to be. So it's very easy to fall into a trap and ask Jeet a certain question with the response in mind. But what happens then is it takes away the spontaneity, it takes away the rawness, it takes away the innocence with which a conversation can happen and through which organic learnings can take place. So I'll say the first step is to be genuinely curious about the person you're interviewing and what you want to know from that person. What do you want to learn as a person, as an individual, not as an interviewer, not as a representative of the organization, not with a response in mind, not with an outcome in mind, but as a person, as an individual. If you have the luxury to do this, right, I know sometimes you don't, because sometimes there is an end goal, it's predetermined that you have to get those outcomes. I get it. But if you want to be a really good interviewer, right, then start off by first being curious and interested in the person you're interviewing and know from the onset, what would I like to learn from this person? What is this person? What is it that I look up to this person for? What is it that I respect this person for? I've got this 20-minute, 30-minute, 1 hour opportunity to milk this person and learn as much as I can. What am I going to ask this person? Ask the questions that are going to make a real difference to your life as an individual. Because chances are, if it's going to make a difference to your life, it's going to help you in some way, it's going to help hundreds, if not thousands, of other people in similar ways as well. Right? So start off by being really curious and being really interested. Number one. Number two, ask open-ended questions. Don't ask closed questions. Don't ask double-barreled questions where you're firing two questions in the form of one sentence. Ask single questions. Ask open-ended questions, which gives the interviewee, the person you're interviewing, the opportunity to navigate and find their own direction, to build their own journey of response. Because that way you tend to influence lesser of their thoughts, and what you're going to be getting is something that's a lot more organic, a lot more authentic, a lot more honest, and a lot more truthful. So ask open-ended questions, ask single questions, one question at a time. You can build those questions up. You can start by asking, so how long have you been in this industry for? Do you still remember the first day at work? What was your thought process? What were your feelings on that day? Then you ask them, so over the years, what has the feelings changed? So you're gradually building up that story over the course of the interview. You're taking the interviewee through their own life story. You're getting them to reflect on the different phases of their careers and their journeys. And that's possible. So you're guiding, you're facilitating, but you're not influencing it. You're not using language that says that, so how excited were you on your first day? Because when I say how excited were you on your first day, I'm compelling the interviewee to respond by saying that they were excited, right? So I do not want to influence them. So in communication, we call this a clean language approach, where you use languaging that is neutral, that does not incept any ideas, thoughts, or doesn't influence the response in any particular way. So I believe that as an interviewee, we must master that art of asking clean questions, neutral questions that allows the interviewee to really share their most honest aspects and elements with us throughout the interview. Right. So that's the second thing I think we can do.
Fantastic. So just to sum that up, open-ended question. So it starts with being curious. So be genuinely curious. Open-ended questions, single questions, and clean questions. No, that's not going to influence the interviewee, right? The person that's being interviewed. So Rahul, I have a follow-up question to that. Okay, and the follow-up question to that is this: what happens if the person that you're interviewing just does not get to the answer at all? That means it's an open-ended question, but somehow the answers that's being presented does not answer the question that's being asked. As an interviewer, how can we then direct this person back, to the point of the question itself, and without making them look bad, but at the same time, get them back to on track with the question at hand?
I think it's about first identifying why are they not answering the question. Right? Is it that they did not understand the question, or they did not understand the intention of the question clearly enough, or are they trying to sidestep the question because they're uncomfortable with answering the question? Right? So understanding the intention of why that question is not being answered is the first step, and that takes a lot of awareness and that takes familiarity. So if you're going to interview someone, I always say spend at least 20 to 30 minutes before the interview to have small talk with the person, just to establish what kind of a person they are. Right, because that will help you in the course of your interview to be able to read them a lot more accurately. Right, you'll be able to look at their body language, you'll be able to see the shift in the expressions, their eye movements, and you'll be able to pick out whether this person is just lost, or are they just going to a completely different zone because they're getting carried away. They're so passionate about one particular word that you said, they just get carried away.
Right?
And that can happen, right? Because they just hear that one word and they get triggered and they get so carried away that they forget about the rest of the question. So that could happen as well. So identify why. If they're uncomfortable with something, I think try to see what are they uncomfortable with. Was it the way that the question was structured? You was then try to restructure the question in a more mild manner, less provocative manner, less. Sometimes people just feel cornered. So maybe give them a bit more room, expand the question a bit more, so that you are able. For example, if I'm going to ask you, Jit, so tell me about your biggest failure in life. Now, being a public figure, sometimes you may not want to talk about your biggest failure in life, because that's a big thing, right? You might not be ready to have that much of vulnerability in front of a group of people you don't know. And if I sense that from you, that you're really going off topic and off tangent here, you're talking about how success has been evasive for you, but not talking about failure. I may just expand it a bit and say, so Jit, you're talking about how success is evasive for you. But amongst the entire journey that you had in pursuit of success, is there one particular moment that stood out the most and you wish that had happened, that had materialized for you? So, you just expand the scope of the question, because now I'm giving you a range, right? You can pick any of those things that you have already shared.
Yep.
And the fact that you have already shared that means you're comfortable with that, right? So within what you have shared, what is that one failure? What is that one moment that you hope or you regret that you did not materialize eventually? I think so. You play within the comfort environment of your interviewing, and then you're able to draw that richness from there. So that's one thing that you can do. The second thing I believe that you can do as an interviewer to draw people back is to tell them that I have a follow-up question. So you don't make them look bad, but you can repeat the same question in a different way, different choice of words, but it's a follow-up question. So you still bring them back to it, but not making them look bad, not pointing out that they did not answer the question. So I think that's another option also available.
Fantastic. And I think this is where what you shared just now, that little tip that you shared just now about asking single questions really helps, right? Because then it allows you to gauge, whether, they're evading the question, or the question needs to be structured differently, whether then you approach it as a follow-up question. Because sometimes when you give a 2-part question or 3-part question, the person being interviewed genuinely may forget what the questions were, or they may hear the 3rd part to the 3-part question and get excited over that and just answer the 3rd part and forget about 1 and 2. So I can see now the value of asking one question at a time. Okay, so Rahul, I've known you for many years, and I know for a fact you do great interviews, because you have this ability to ask those hard-hitting questions. But again, it's very good, constructive questions that's going to bring out the best of the interviewees. And a lot of times, I think this is like a special power that you have, where you get to think on your feet and ask really good questions on the fly. So there is a question from Azura that asks this question. That's why I brought it up. And her question is, how are we able to think on the fly for constructive questions? Do you have any tips for that, Rahul?
And I've got one philosophy with this. The only question I think about is my first question. That's the only question I think about, right? Other than that, as an interviewer, as a person who's conducting the interview, my job is not to think. My job is to listen. Because the responses of the speaker or the interviewee leads me to my next question. Because whatever they're sharing with me, if it interests me, if it piques my curiosity, I'm going to have a follow-up question because I want to know more about something that they said. I want to understand something better. I want to build upon it. I want to know the next steps, right? So it's actually the interviewee that's providing the questions to you. Your job as an interviewer is not to think of questions, is to listen for questions, right? The questions lie within the responses of your interviewee, right? And that's a simple art that I practice. I simply listen a lot. And an interviewer in my books is someone who has got very good listening skills, and especially active listening skills. The ability to paraphrase, the ability to repeat or parrot what the interviewee has said, to seek their confirmation or their clarification or elaboration. I think these are valuable traits that an interviewer can possess. So stop thinking. Because if you're thinking while the interviewee is speaking, then you're not listening anymore. Because our mind cannot juggle both at the same time. We are not able to listen and think of a question at the same time. So the moment I start thinking of a question, I'm not paying attention to my interviewee anymore. Right? So I want to be so focused on my interviewee. I'm hearing every word that they say, every sentence that they say. I'm looking into their choice of words. I'm looking into their body language. I'm looking at what they're saying and what they're not saying. Because even in what they're not saying, there lies a certain message. It's for me to draw that out. It's for me to pull that out. It's for me to dig that out, depending on what the purpose of my interview is. So I would say that listen very, very attentively to your interviewees because they are providing you with your next question. So you're not thinking of your next question on the fly. You're simply listening out for your next questions. So I think that's a very important thing that most interviewers, because they're so caught up with what's my next question going to be? What's my next question going to be? And therefore, your interview starts to seem very fragmented. Right? You're jumping from one place to another place. There's no continuity. There's no flow. And even the interviewee gets confused after a while. You're all over the place, as an interviewer. So listen, the answers are there. And number two, remember one thing: your job as an interviewer is not to make yourself look good. Your job as an interviewer is to help your interviewee look good, right?
I hope I'm making myself look really bad today.
Sorry, I don't think so, man.
No, but that's really true, Rahul, because as soon as you mention that the job of the interviewer is to make the interviewee looks good, it just brings me back to all these experiences where I've seen the interviewer trying to now add insights and so to say steal the limelight with their insights. And I think as an interviewee, that does take away that value that they're trying to add itself, right? So yeah, I like that and I love that. Thinking on the fly is just listening, and then thinking from there. Fantastic. So ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who have just tuned in, we are live right now with Rahul Shah, a communication specialist who's got over 15 years of experience in the domain of communication. He's worked with over 60,000 individuals from a variety of different organizations to help them communicate better. And we are taking live questions at this point of time. We've got only about 10 minutes left, and we've got a few more questions that I'm going to put forth to Rahul. So if you do have any questions that you want to ask, please feel free to ask those questions. Our topic today is on how to answer questions insightfully. So far, we've had questions from 3 different perspectives. We've got questions from the perspective of a subject matter expert that's being interviewed. We've had a question from the perspective of a job seeker that's being interviewed. And we've also had questions from the perspective of the interviewer themselves on how to ask better questions and how to think on the fly. So Rahul, for the next question, we are going back to the perspective of an interviewee, the person that's getting interviewed. And the question that I have here is this. Let's see. I think this is a very good question as well. What if, I'm not able to answer 2 of the previous questions that was asked? How do I still stay confident for the next question and answer it without hesitation? Because I'm sure the self-confidence is going to drop, the doubt is going to kick in, especially if you can't answer 2 questions. How do you still maintain that level of confidence?
That's a very interesting question, and I would like to be the first to admit this. Okay, we are all humans, so let's not have unrealistic expectations of ourselves. Not all of us deal with this kind of situations in the same way. Some of us handle it better. Some of us don't handle it well enough. If I was to be in a situation where I failed 2 times and I have to go on and try a third attempt, I'm someone who generally feels a bit more motivated. You know what? This time around, I must get this done right, because everything that I have, I'm betting on this. So I'm the kind of a person, and that happened to me during my driving license test. So I passed my driving only on the 3rd attempt. All right. So I always have a joke with my wife, because my wife passed on the 1st attempt. So I always tell her that you don't have experience. You are just a one-time tested person. I was tested 3 times before they will give me my license. So I'm very well tested. So I'm more reliable on the roads. Right. But so it's just a matter of how you perceive things and how you approach things. But I think if you have not done well the first 2 times and you are on the 3rd question now, just remember one thing: the interview is not an exam. All right, it's not how much you're scoring out of 100. You just need to respond to one question so well that you're going to be able to win over and buy over your interviewer's trust. All right, so they're not there to look for perfect answers. So there's also no such thing as not able to answer. All right, you always have an answer. Right, the matter is how convincing was your answer, or what did your answer reveal about you. Right, and you just need a one question that's well answered, that's honestly answered, that's a right fit for the organization, that demonstrates what they're looking for you to be able to score that job or to score that role. So do not take it in its entirety. Look at it as one question at a time. All right, the first 2 questions did not give me enough room to portray my skills, my talents, my strengths in the best light. But maybe this 3rd question might just be the opportunity for me to do that. Right, and that's what the interview is about. The interview is simply about selling yourself. Right, it's like going to a customer and saying that you need me, you want to hire me because these are the skills that I have, these are the talents that I have. And every question is an opportunity or an avenue for you to push those talents, those skills, those expertise out there to your prospect. All right. In this case, a prospect is a hirer. So it's an opportunity for you to showcase. So I have this thing where I encourage all interviewees to have, in the public relations world, we call this a PR5. It's a list of 5 things or 5 key messaging that I must push out by the end of my entire interview, regardless of what questions it asks. So this goes back to Tony Buzan's approach of association, right? You can ask me any question. I'm going to try to find a link back to one of the points or 2 of the points. So go in prepared this list of 5. What are your top 5 strengths, your top 5 accomplishments, your top 5 talents, your skills that you think you want to sell to this company because it's going to be valuable to them, right? 5 aspects of yourself that is going to be extremely valuable to them, for which they want to hire you. So have this list of 5 things that is already pre-prepared before the interview, and regardless of what question they ask you, try to push these 5 points through those questions. And then you cannot go wrong, because as long as you're selling yourself, you're good. And then it becomes a matter of whether those 5 things are what the organization is looking for, right? Whether you're a good fit or not. And that's what it is.
Perfect. So, well, we've got a few more questions that's coming up. 2 of the questions I'm going to put forth after this is actually questions that you've already answered earlier on in this interview itself. So maybe if you could just give a very quick 30 seconds answer for this next two questions, just as a form of recap, that would be great. The first question is this. It's from Mujahid Hussein. And the question is, how do you curtail self-fear at Sage? Whether when you're delivering presentations or an interview, how do you curtail self-fear while you're on stage?
So prepare. The more you know, the more confident you are that I know my content, I know my subject, I know what I'm going to be talking about, I know my script really well. The more you are prepared, the more, if in terms of presentations, practice, right? A lot of presenters do not take the effort to practice out loud enough. They just have this idea that, as long as I got my slides and as long as I practiced it 2-3 times in my head, I'm going to be able to go out there and deliver. No, you cannot, right? Because how you sound when you vocalize or articulate things is very different from how you sound in your own head. So you got to practice out loud. And the more practice hours you put in by practicing out loud and the more preparation you have, the less frightened you're going to be. I wouldn't say you're not going to be frightened at all, because a certain amount of fear is good, because that means you're holding yourself accountable. But you're not going to let that fear overwhelm you or overcome you to a point that you become paralyzed, right? Or it stops you from performing to your best level. So be very prepared, practice a lot, understand what a self-talk is. What is a voice in your head telling you that you're not ready for, not sure about, what are you frightened about? Let it be amplified, let it be known to you. Take the actions to bridge those gaps that your mind is telling you you are fearful of.
Perfect. Thank you, Rahul. And the next question is this. The next question is from Steve. And Steve is asking, if someone from the audience asks you a question which you don't know how to answer, how are you going to reply and address it?
All right. First, I think ask yourself what you do not know about the question. Do you not know the data? Do you not know the statistics? Do you not have examples? Or do you just not have a stand on it? Right? And I have a simple framework that I usually use when it comes to answering questions. And you cannot go wrong with this framework. Right? It's called a PREP framework: point, reason, example, point. State a point. Right? Stating a point means taking a stand. No matter what question is being asked, you always have a stand. You always have a point to make. I don't know is also a point, and that's also a stand. Right? So take a stand. If the stand is, if the answer is I don't know, then so be it. I don't know. The next step is giving a reason. It's okay for you not to know. Tell people why you don't know. Right? Explain to them, why is it that I don't know? I don't know because this is something that's really new. It has it has only appeared in mainstream domain, or it has only spread to the masses in the last week. And I've been busy and not been able to catch up with this, and so I've not been well read about this particular issue or subject on hand. So I don't know. So you give a reason for it. Give an evidence or an example. All right. In the case of I don't know, you don't need to give an example. You don't have to give any evidence. But if you can, try to link it to something that you do know. Right? So, for example, if somebody asks me about rocket science, I know nothing about rocket science. But what I do know about is I have heard speeches by, for example, I may have heard speeches by Bill Gates, and saying that technology is going to evolve at a pace where it's not very far from the day that man can actually exist on the moon. So, for example, it's a hypothetical thing, right? So I may have, and I can link that back and say, I do not know about rocket science, I do not know about spacecrafts, I do not know about any aeronautics, but what I do know is that at the pace at which technology is accelerating, I think very soon all of us will have an opportunity to ride a spacecraft really soon, right? And then reiterate your point again. So I don't really know. I don't. This is not my subject expertise, but I do look forward to the time when I can sit on a spacecraft and maybe visit moon someday, just for a holiday, right? So PREP. So you can always have a response, but you take a stand, give a reason for that stand. Why are you saying what you are saying? Give an explanation for it or justification for it. Provide examples, evidence, stories, analogies, anecdotes where you can, and then reiterate your point again.
PREP. Perfect. I think you even shared that in one of your recent videos that we have up on the Ideas and Inspiration channel, right? When you were teaching how to create and deliver impactful speeches. And when it comes to structuring a presentation, you actually taught the PREP technique itself, and I love that. I think it's easy to remember, easy to use, and I think more importantly, it produces amazing results, in terms of structuring.
And the best thing is this, it prevents you from rambling on because it keeps you contained. State a point, give a reason, give an example, reiterate a point, and you close, right? You don't keep going in circles. So it gives you a very clean structure.
Perfect. Cool. So, Rahul, I've got two more questions from the audience, and then after that, I've got a final question for you before we bring this to a close. The next question really is this: how do you manage your anxiety, okay, that results because of a total blockage of thoughts, because you just, you just forget what you want to say, you forget what you know, and you're in a state where you're just thought blocked, and you're feeling very anxious about that. How do you move on from that, or what do you do in a situation like that?
I'm going to answer this question as how do we manage anxiety when we are on
Okay.
stage,
Yeah.
right? So because I think I already addressed about the fear part, which is
Yep.
also partly anxiety on the preparation end. So I don't want to repeat that again. I think the preparation part is important, but sometimes no matter how much you're prepared, you go up, and it's happened to me once, right? I was told that I'm supposed to do a talk for a group of people, and I'm going to be put in a classroom. And when I turned up on the actual day, it was an auditorium and the room was filled with 500 people. I was just not mentally prepared for it. I was not content-wise prepared for it, because how you engage a group of 25 people versus 500 people, the content is different, the activities are different. And I was just not ready. I almost froze backstage when I looked out and I saw that auditorium full of 500 people. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Right? But thankfully, experience kicked in, and I was able to pull some things together from different folders, different files, repackage my presentation quickly, and still be able to pull off that keynote well. But there's certain things that had to be done. Number one, every time you feel like your mind has blocked off, don't panic, just pause, stop. It may look awkward, it might feel awkward, but it's okay. Because remember that the priority really is to be able to gather and collect your thoughts back together in a logical manner, right? So to be clear on what you want to say next, so to reactivate the mind, to give your mind, the brain, the space to think with clarity, all right? As for that, you really need to sometimes just stop and pause, all right? So just stop, all right? Pause, don't do anything. Just let it sit, right? Number two, breathe. The more oxygen you take in to your system, the clearer your mind is going to become. So breathing is one of the most undermined or the most ignored aspects of speaking, whether it's in presentations, in interview, in storytelling, in any speaking medium. Breathing is one of the most forgotten aspects. It is seldom talked about. Not many people talk about breathing when it comes to speaking, but the reality is you can only speak as well as you breathe, because the more oxygen you take in, the more clarity it gives to your mind. At the same time, the more you feed your diaphragm, so the more powerful your voice sounds. So breathing does two things. It helps you to think better, it helps you to speak better, right? So pause, breathe, take in a lot of oxygen. Don't hyperventilate, control your breathing. So you breathe at a controlled pace, right? So that's the second thing you do. The third thing you do is anchor yourself in the present moment. Have a pen or a pointer or a marker or anything that you have around you, all right? And this is a little trick that I learned from a movie, right? So you have a little pen, right? And what happens is this: fear is always a product of future anticipation. What if, what if, what if? Future. What you want to do when you're presenting or you're answering an interview question is be anchored in the present. So pain is one of those emotions that anchors you to the present, but you do not want to feel pain. So another alternative pain is pressure, right? But positive pressure. So what you do is hold a clicker or a pointer, find a blunt end, put your thumb over it, and just press down as you're speaking, right? So this constantly reminds you that you are coming back to the present moment. So it's distracting all the negative thoughts and re-channel it to this pressure over here. So do that, all right? So it's going to help you to really just offload all negative thought, distractions, fear, and it's going to bring you into translate that into fear or pressure, because you can only feel one thing at a time, technically, right? So this pressure is what you're feeling right now. It keeps you anchored in the present moment, and that helps you to manage your anxiety quite a bit. So pause, breathe, and apply some positive pressure to distract away from all that negative thoughts and conversations that are preoccupying your mind, leading there to be a lot of chaos, a lot of panic going on in your head, too many windows opening up, and therefore your system just crashing, right? So give it time to reactivate itself.
Amazing. Thank you, Rahul. Our last question from our audience is this, okay? Is there any technique to keep the interview under the interviewee's control? That means, I suppose I'm taking it as an interviewee, how do I control the whole interview?
I'm usually asked how to keep the interview under the interviewer's control. So I'm
Yeah,
happy.
yeah, that's exactly right. That's actually the question
I'm very
that
happy
we
with this
normally
question.
seen. Yeah. So now it's
So
actually the
I'm
other
going to
way
answer this
around.
question the
Yeah.
same way that I answered Reni's question that
Yeah.
it's about curiosity, right? If you want to keep the interview under your control, there are two things you need to be able to do. Number one, you need to maintain your interviewer's curiosity. So try not to give, if let's say there are three things that you want to share about something, start off by saying, you know what, there are three aspects that I can answer this question from. Right? The first is this, the second is this, pause. Let the interviewer ask you, sorry, but you said three, right? So what's the third one? Right? In that way,
Okay.
you keep the interviewer asking you questions that gives you room, and then you say, you know what? Since you asked me what the third question is, I knew you were going to ask me. I'm going to answer that question, but before that, let me just elaborate on something else I forgot to talk about earlier. So it just gives you time and room to just keep saying more things that you want to say and you need to push out, right? So that way you control the pace of the interview, you control the direction of the interview, or say something that you know that your interviewer is going to get curious about, right? So, for example, if the interviewer asks, "How do I manage anxiety?" So you tell them the answer, tell them the three steps. These are three steps of how to manage anxiety. But you know that the next follow-up question is going to be, okay, but when I am so frozen and so paralyzed, how do I really breathe? How do I breathe without hyperventilating? Then you talk about breathing techniques. So it's going to give you more room to build the interview the way that you want it to and keep it within a space that you are comfortable with. So that's the first thing you can do. The second thing is there's a chunking approach, right? Where you can basically navigate questions and keep bringing it back into your domain, right? So, for example, the interviewer says that, hey, can you tell me what your favorite fruit is? And you are not really an expert when it comes to fruits because you've been dealing with vegetables all your life. You can say, well, I think that there are a lot of fruits that I would love to eat, but I really enjoy talking about vegetables more than fruits because they're fresher, they provide more nutrients, they have less sucrose in them, and therefore I think they are healthier overall. It doesn't give you the sudden spikes of energy and sudden crashes that you get as a result of eating fruits. So, sorry, not sucrose, fructose. So at the end of it, I think I prefer to eat more vegetables. And so let me explain more about vegetables. Right? So you bring a question that was asked about fruits and you bring it towards vegetables. Don't ignore the question, address it, but you can talk about the downsides of it. You can talk about why you don't want to talk about it, and then bring it into a domain that you do want to talk about and talk about something that you are an expert of. But make sure by the end of it, you're still giving valuable insights and you're still enriching your audience and adding value to them. Because if not, you're not answering the question, you're adding no value, and there's not an insightful answer. So for it to be an insightful response, just make sure that your audience can take away something valuable from your response still. I think that's what's important.
Fantastic. Rahul, thank you so much. I think you've shared, I sincerely believe that you have really shared a lot today. I think it's more than what I thought you would be sharing. But, that's the beauty of chatting with you, and I always learn a lot, even though I feel that, I'm asking questions to help other people learn. I always find myself learning a lot more with every one of our conversations that we have, and I actually had one last question which I wanted to ask you. And that question was really, is there a simple framework we can use to easily answer questions and to answer questions insightfully? But you did share about the PREP framework just now. Is that the framework that we can use, or is there something else? Because
I
I
think
like the PREP.
I would say that PREP is the most universal framework and it is the easiest and simplest to use. Right? But since you asked, Jeet, and this is ideas and inspiration, and it always gets me into a mood of generosity, so I'm still going to share three more frameworks that you can use. Right? Just because there's a one more thing, right? One last thing.
Nice.
So just as a bonus to everyone that's tuning in, for you to have taken your time to come and watch this, and I really hope that this proves useful to you. There are three other frameworks that I would suggest and recommend for you to use depending on the context, the scenario, or the nature of your interview. So pick and use it appropriately and selectively as you deem viable or feasible, right? So they are all based onto a concept of the power of three. Now, the power of three simply means that whatever you talk about, do it in sets of three, right? To simply show that there's good correlation, there's enough breadth and depth in your responses. So the first will be a timeline approach or timeline structure where you can talk about things in a timeline sequence, or you can respond to a question in a timeline sequence, right? So you can talk about what used to happen before this, what's the current state, and what do you see as a future trend, right? So you talk about something in a timeline basis. So if the interviewer asks you, so tell me your highlights about your career so far. So you can talk about your career highlights up to, at the starting phase of your career, in your initial first 5 years. Then there was another highlight in the next 5 years of your career. And moving forward, what do you see as a highlight in your organization that you have come to interview for? So you can do a timeline approach. So you can use a timeline sequence to structure your response. You could also use a multiple point of view structure, right? Where you talk about a particular subject by addressing the different possible points of views, right? And by doing so, you're showing that you have a comprehensive thought process. You are able to think from multiple different angles. You are able to be empathetic towards other people's feelings, thoughts, and opinions. And then when you are responding, you're covering all ground, but you're still taking a stand at the end of it. So while you're covering multiple points of views, you must still take a stand. And if you don't take a stand, then you're just basically not giving an answer. So you have to take a stand. And the third approach, I would say, is a problem solution approach. Identify a problem that's existing, or a past problem, or a future anticipated problem, and give 3 possible solutions to it, for example, right? So you can use a problem solution approach. So start off by selling the problem, and then share your possible solutions or your suggested solutions as a result. So timeline, problem solution, multiple points of view. So there are 3 different structures that you can use on top of the PRUP.
Perfect. Rahul, thank you so much for joining me today in this live chat as well. Like I said, I bargained for an hour. It's gone slightly more than an hour, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We had a lot of good questions today, and I've got more questions actually, but we'll keep that for the next session as well. Right. So once again, from me, from everyone that has tuned in, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your insights. Ladies and gentlemen, this video itself is going to be on the Ideas and Inspiration page for at least another 1 or 2 weeks. So feel free to watch this video again to internalize everything that's been shared, because a lot of things has been shared today. So internalize it, watch it in bite-sized pieces. I will create timestamps with questions itself. So, you can go and look at which are the questions that resonates most with you, and then you can watch that segment of the video again. And if you do have more questions, always feel free to write those questions down in the comment section below the video itself. Rahul and me will check these questions from time to time, and we will answer those questions. So do remember to subscribe to the Ideas and Inspiration channel. It's just here, the button is somewhere down there. Just click on it, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell. We've got amazing content on the channel itself, a lot of great content. There's going to be more live interviews that's coming up. So just subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell so that you get notified. You get the alerts every time we are going to either do a live session or we are uploading a new video. Okay, Rahul, you've got a great channel called Up Your Game as well. So guys, do check it out. Go to Up Your Game. That's another platform that's got just great content on it. Just watch these videos. All these videos there are just knowledge that's free for everyone to consume, and that's the beauty of being in the digital space. So once again, thank you all so much for joining us today for this live session. Rahul Shah, it's been a pleasure, sir. Thank you again for joining us on this channel. And any parting words, sir?
Thank you so much, guys. So go ace your next interviews and all the best. Remember, at the end of the day, just be focused on, by the end of my interview, how am I adding value? How am I enriching? How am I helping somebody else? And I think you guys will do just great.
Perfect. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. I'll catch up with you all again soon. See you all. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.